And we're back for the Coverager podcast. I have Joao Cardosa de Jesus. Joao is the founder and CEO of Lovys. Lovys is the first 100% digital, all-in-one, and flexible insurance provider in France. One single interface, one single monthly subscription for all of your insurance needs. Simple, transparent, personal. Joao, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure talking with you.
Let's put you right into the hot seat and start peppering you with some questions. What immediately strikes me is France. So for the audience sake, let's give a little bit of background. Can you describe the French market for personal insurance?
The French market is a very exciting market. First of all, it's a market with a very high penetration of insurance products. If we compare it with with other countries. For instance, in car insurance, 86% of the people own a policy versus the average in Europe that is 60%. But interestingly, customers are not necessarily well protected. They have on average 4 policies, but there tends to be overprotection in some cases, underprotection in others. And lastly, some insights that we have been gathering with users is that there are a lot of pain points. So 44% of the French complain about the complexity of finding one's offers. 80% say that they don't have enough time to basically make sure that they are well protected. 16% they claim that fear of the paper or what we call administrative procedures. So it's definitely a very exciting moment to be in France and embarking on this journey of improving and trying to give something different to the insurance market.
Yeah. Is it true that European buyers are much more comfortable buying and negotiating and transacting insurance online?
I would say that actually users in general, they are ready to use online experience, be it for food delivery, be it for mobility, be it for buying insurance, as long as we provide them a good quality platform, a good experience. I think that's fundamentally the need. If you see, there are platforms selling insurance all the way from US to India, and it all works as long as we provide them the wow factor and the good experience.
Yeah. One of your most common value propositions that I've seen on LinkedIn and on your website is the all-in-one bundle solution. Mm-hmm. What is that, and why does the market need that?
Let's start from customer insight, and let's put the product for a second on the side. If we think about all the customer is looking to insurance and is looking to his life in general, it's very interesting because in the 90s, the internet brought abundance. We had a lack of choice. And now we have exactly the opposite problem. We are overwhelmed with choice. We want simplification. We want to have convenience. And that's the interesting element these days, is that choice is no longer the problem. What to choose became the problem. And what we find interesting when you look from that perspective, and if we put it now insurance a little bit on the side, let's think for instance Uber. They offer cars, vans, bikes, scooters. Do we say that they ban all of that? No, basically our view is that they are offering a solution for mobility. And what we think at Lovys is that above all, we need to give a solution for protection. Protection is the pain point from the user standpoint. It's not actually home insurance or car insurance. So the way we see it is that unless we really think on the category as a whole, we will be always very limiting ourselves and not really be sufficiently innovative from a customer standpoint, from the experience standpoint. And that's what we see is that the problem from a user was not home or car insurance, was actually we needed to come up with a way to reimagine the category. And that's exactly what we are doing at Lovys.
Yeah. And to be clear, if someone doesn't have a home or someone doesn't have a car, you will still sell them the home renters or car insurance if they need it.
Exactly. Yeah. So the idea is to really offer to provide the users with one place where they can protect themselves according to them. It's not really to impose package, but rather to say, this is your all-in-one solution for protection, whatever your needs are, whatever your circumstances are. And that's very interesting, your point, because actually providing a category to the user, basically by definition, means that we need to really to think about personalization. We really need to think about following the user rather than to say, okay, this is you have to have a car insurance because it's compulsory. Boom, here it is the product. No, we really, it's very interesting because it forces us to really start with the user in mind and thinking through what are his needs and providing that ease of mind and of use.
Yeah, yeah. And bundled solution means it's probably less expensive to buy the two policies together than to buy them separately.
It's interesting that by default, giving an all-in-one solution enables us to do that. Nevertheless, I would say that we need to think, to make a question here about the price element. If we think about, I mean, from vacuum cleaners to sparkling water, there are companies out there charging their products for a premium. Why the hell in insurance? We need to be thinking all the time, oh, we have to be the cheapest. We need to go down the price. And our view is actually, yes, we need to be competitive, but we don't need to be the cheapest, rather the opposite. The main point here is that we need to be really innovative on the experience of the user, have a good price, yes. We need to have a pricing, yes, that in the way stimulates the user to have his all protection needs fulfilled with Lovys. But by all means, our goal is not to be the cheapest, rather the opposite. What we see is that there is room to create a good quality product, a differentiated product, and if we compare with other solutions out there, we should be able as well to charge a premium for that.
Okay. And will the all-in-one be on a single policy, or is it multiple policies that get mailed together? You know, how do you separate out the coverage, exposure, premium, and how you end up streamlining the experience for the customer?
That's a very good question. So let's think about, so insurance it has its own building blocks. So we think about the coverage, the single coverage that we group into a policy, and that policy, and so on and so forth. The interesting element here is that, and what we understand is that, yes, we need to be able to provide, if we are able from a risk standpoint, group it as much as possible, then we have a hedge from an underwriting perspective, because there are behavioral changes. So when client, for instance, if we see that he has a car and a motorbike, so of course he cannot be driving both at the same time. So you have a hedge and from an underwriting standpoint and from a risk understanding standpoint. So for us, there are two elements there. One element there is to make sure that those underwriting insights, those insights that lead to a better understanding of risk, that we look to the whole perspective. Then there is a second dimension that is, okay, how do you go about and how do you price those elements, and how do you put them from a legal standpoint? How do you group them from a legal standpoint? So there is those two roles that we need to reconcile, and so definitely from an underwriting standpoint, that's much easier. Then afterwards, from a legal standpoint, on how we group them as products. But so at the moment, most of that from a strict legal standpoint, it's standard products, but we are looking at it so that those benefits, that we can pass on those benefits that we see on the behavioral changes that goes with the customer putting different policies with Lovys.
Yeah. What has been the reaction when I would say from start to now, when you do approach, any stakeholders, carriers, reinsurers, what have been the reaction to them to the product that you're developing?
It's very interesting. In the beginning, the reaction was very simple. They were like, "You are mad." The customer feedback, the big feedback in the market is like, "You guys are being way too ambitious." That's if it's let alone difficult to start a new product. If you guys need to go and come up with all this vision to the market, it's just too much. That was basically the feedback that we had. Luckily, given my background in comparison websites, we knew how we could basically be more agile, and how we could basically have a good policy management system that would enable us to do that. And now jumping to where we are today. So 2 years on the road, we have basically 4 products live. We are bringing another one live next month. That will be pet insurance. So we have now live smartphone, car, home, and we are also doing health that is live for partnerships. And now if you look to the data, the conclusion is obvious, is that what we are proposing to the client resonates with them, and particularly resonates with a younger audience. So when we look to our client database today, 85% of our users are 45 years old or younger. And interestingly, the range that we have more users is on the 25 to 35. 45% of our users are on that range.
Yep, that's incredibly impressive. Can you rewind back? Where'd the idea come from? How did the team get assembled?
It's very interesting. The idea actually came when we decided. I mean, so it's very interesting. But I started off in insurtech with a comparison website in Brazil in 2011. So I've been now, it's almost scary. I've been now in insurtech for the last 9 years, like from the moment that no one spoke about insurtech. So in Brazil, we did a comparison website. And then in the midst of the crisis, we also were confronted like, how do you acquire customers without spending money? We found a way. We did the first large B2B2C platform when no one was talking about partnerships and B2B2C. And then
that was still in Brazil.
That was still in Brazil.
Okay.
That was in 2016.
Okay.
And then it was when there was this all hype and boom about insurtech. And it was hilarious because at the time I was actually in San Francisco, and we would show to the investors our traction, and the numbers were really exciting, and everyone would look and say, guys, what you are doing is amazing. It's like incredible, your KPIs, your unit economics, but you guys are in Brazil. For God's sake, get out of there. And after basically knocking at the door of more than 100 investors and everyone declining for the simple reason that it was in Brazil, at the moment now Brazil is in fashion again, but at the time was not at all. We just said, okay, gosh, let's come to the realization that we need to move abroad. And then we decided, okay, we just felt as a team that okay, we have an insane experience in insurance. We have been doing comparison websites, partnerships. So we felt, okay, if we go to Europe, if we leverage on everything we learn and we have seen, what can be really disruptive? What shall we do? What is the market? So it's very interesting. People ask me, so why did you go to France? Did you, like, I remember going and that was very interesting. The first time that I went to a VC in France, that the VC asked me for a meeting, we went there and they were like, so do you have a French girlfriend? And I said, no. So you had a girlfriend, you moved here and then you break up. No, we moved here because it seemed to us as the best market. So we literally decided on the market, we decided on the concept, and the realization of the concept was because we felt that the way people were looking at insurance was product driven. Was like, okay, home insurance is bad, it's paper, whatever. We are improving home insurance. Oh, the car insurance, it sucks. Let's improve it, do a better car insurance. And what we felt is like, okay, yes, we can take that product-driven approach, but if we give a step back, that's not really disruptive. What we felt was like, that's not the problem. The problem is that we need really to think from a category standpoint. And so when we made ourselves the question, okay, from a category standpoint, what makes sense? If we look at protection as a whole, insurance as a whole, then it becomes obvious that it needs to be a single monthly subscription. It needs to be flexible. It needs to, and then the whole concept just was obvious to us. And then the question was different. It was like, how shall we execute upon it? Which one should be, what shall be the go-to market, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So for those in the audience that may be having an urge to do a startup, how long did it take you to get that conception to something that had traction?
I mean, I would say that probably insurance is one of the most painful.
Can you explain why that is?
So I would start, for instance, with my first startup in insurance when I moved to Brazil. So at the time, I was living in London. I worked in investment banking for 6 years. I saw that opportunity in the market. Basically, the opportunity that I saw at the time in 2011 was no one in Brazil was buying insurance online, and we found. So basically, the whole market in Brazil at the time was 70% traditional brokers and 30% bank insurance. So we decided, okay, let's go there and try to build this. It took us, I would say, 2 years until we had a panel.
Yeah.
It was really painful because we go to insurance companies, no one wanted to partner with us. And the fundamental problem in insurance is that there is a huge chicken and egg problem. Is that you go to the insurance carrier and say, okay, I want to create this product. And then they tell, okay, to create that product for us, it will cost us 1 million. And therefore, they have to guarantee that you have a minimum, you can deliver on a minimum volume. So they say, okay, how much money do you have to spend on marketing so that we can understand that we'll be able to deliver on that minimum volume? And so you go to the VCs, and the VC says, oh, but you haven't a carrier yet. And the iteration just goes like crazy.
It's a chicken and egg problem, right? It's
completely.
It's hard to get one aspect moving without nailing the other down, and it's hard to nail the other down without nailing the first one down. And that's probably one of the biggest issues with trying to develop a minimum viable product in insurance is that you can't just create one minimum. You need a few things in place, and those things can't get in place until other things are in place.
Exactly, and the problem is that I would say that there is no bootstrapping either. Like everything costs a lot. So until you sell your first policy, the investment required is massive.
Yeah.
So in Brazil, I would say that we were able to basically break that chicken and egg because the market there is dominated by 4 players, and we understood, okay, we need to go to the other ones. So there were all the particular American players that want and the European players that wanted to increase market share, and they couldn't basically access. They saw as an opportunity to access the market from a different perspective, and that's how we break it. When we went to France, we played in a way the game similarly, but at the time the biggest advantage that I had was that I had a very big network in insurance by then. So when we decided, okay, we'll do this in France, I basically went to my friends and said, guys, you have to help me on this one. So luckily, before we even had the company registered, we had already a couple of insurance partners that were already working with us to create smartphone insurance, to create home insurance, and that speed up the whole process.
Yeah. How do you attract and acquire customers?
So 3 different ways. So, and I would say that those 3 different ways is organic, direct, and partnerships. So on the direct way, I mean, there is just so much, let's face it, there is just so much you can do. So you go the typical channels, Google, affiliation, press websites. On the second one, partnerships, we see that as a big opportunity, particularly what we are doing in terms of branded partnerships. And thirdly, what we see that is probably the biggest opportunity in France right now is to build a brand. Is to really, we have at the moment, and that amazes us as we see that curve growing, 30% of our traffic, of our sales come over from organic traffic. So the interesting element, and that is sort of consistent with the age that we see as our client database. So what we see is that if you are from a younger generation, the different brands, so if we go look to the traditional big brands in France, be it 𝐃𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐿, Zurich, Allianz, they have the same tonality. Then you have a second big group of insurance carriers in France that are the so-called mutuals. But both of them tend to have a similar position as far as brand is when we move from a brand standpoint. And what we see here is that as we go to the market and we basically project Lovys as this new brand that makes you enjoy life to the maximum, that you are protected, so you are free from a different standpoint. So not going through creating the fear, but going through a feeling of empowerment. That's quite a new positioning, and this position associated with there is new tools, there is a different way to look at protection. We see that resonates with users, and we can see that in our traction as well.
Yep. Who is a target buyer?
It's so as I mentioned before. So at the moment, 45% of the users are really in 25 and 35 years old. So at the moment we see that the audience that we have the highest conversion rate. So not only sell more, but highest conversion is that one. So and then it's interesting that we have a higher conversion for women than for men, and we have 52% women and 48% men, but there is a significant higher conversion on women. So we see that there is these young professionals, and that's the audience that works better for us. But what we imagine is that these are fundamentally the early adopters. We imagine that throughout time, we'll see an increase in the other audiences as well.
Okay. How do you plan on positioning Lovys to try to attract someone in their 40s or 50s, maybe not digital native, maybe a little bit less uncomfortable? Do you think it'd be too expensive to try to attract that audience?
It's a great question. And the way we see that is that when we discuss that as a team, the way we see is that the best way to do that is to create a wow, is to make sure that young professional that is trying us for the first time, that he says, whoa, this is amazing. If we get that guy saying, this is amazing, I'm sure that he's going to tell his parents that, guys, stop using or give a try to Lovys. And so we see here, I think the real opportunity is creating wow factor, is really looking at insurance as not something that you need to buy because it's compulsory, but something that you can create a wow around the experience, not only on the onboarding, but at everything. And that's the thing that makes us wake up in the morning and going and working till very late hours, is how we really as a brand stand out. So if we were mentioning Uber before, so if you probably remember that you jump in the car and what everyone remembers was, oh, is the air conditioning good? Is the volume good? And it's like, how do you create that experience to be memorable? And that's the question that we make ourselves at Lovys every single day, is how can we make Lovys and every touch point to be memorable?
Yeah. Your revenue model, how does Lovys earn a profit?
So the way we see that is that for every product that we create, so the customer, let's be clear on one thing. So the customer pays us. And then we have different underwriters for different products and different coverages. So of course, the way we make money is on the delta between what we pay for the underwriting and what the customer pays us. And the reason why I'm actually being a little bit open here is because there are different ways of creating that delta, different depending on the markets. Call it commission, call it fees. For us, the way we see it is that in the end, it's all part of the same. So what we see is that whatever we call it, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that our remuneration is really the delta between whatever the client pays us and whatever we have as an expense from an underwriting standpoint.
Do you have plans to go into other markets, other countries?
I mean, I would say, we were ambitious not only from a product standpoint, a concept standpoint, but from a geographic and where we see Lovys, I would say that as a team, we're very, very ambitious. And from day one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that the company was set up and is set up to be at least European. So we have at the moment a team in 4 different locations. And the reason why is that at every single thing that we create, we make ourselves the question. If we want to serve Europe, where is the best location to have this department? For example, now I am doing actually this interview out of Lisbon because we have just created our customer care in Lisbon. Why Lisbon? Because it's the best location in Europe that enables us to have now be servicing France, but tomorrow we can service Spain or Italy or UK out of here. And every single time, that's the way we see things, that we need to prepare the organization to be able to do that. But then you say, okay, and right now, when will you be doing that? And my way to look at that is that we need to deserve it. We need to prove that as a team, we can do it. And therefore, that's the way we reconcile being very ambitious and very driven, but also to stay focused at today.
Yeah. It probably doesn't hurt being in Lisbon. You're from Brazil, so you speak Portuguese, I'm assuming.
Actually, it's very interesting. I'm actually born and raised in Portugal, and similar to France, I went to Brazil because we saw the opportunity there.
Oh, okay.
I mean, when
so you're back home.
Exactly, I'm back home from that standpoint. I would have that. I think Portugal and as one big challenge is that, like Sweden, we are a very small country. So, and I think one of the problems of the Portuguese startups and the Portuguese entrepreneurs is that they fought so far very small. I think we have just 10 million inhabitants. So for a market like insurance, you need to think big. So that's why I went to Brazil, and that's why now we started in France selling. So as a market at the moment, we're just selling in France because of that, because we need big markets.
Yeah. Do you have any plans to expand the number of lines of insurance business?
So at the moment, we are basically trying to cover property and casualty ASAP. But yes, the way we see it is that we need to be as complete as we can be from a customer standpoint. So our promise is, with Lovys, you have an all-in-one solution. It's simple as that. And that need is not only in property and casualty. That need goes into health, it goes into life. So for us, then, it's just a matter of how fast can we go and how fast can we have something, and making sure that we are still being extremely tough on ourselves on the quality that we are delivering to the customer.
I will have all of your contact information, including your direct LinkedIn and connections to Lovys' homepage in the show notes. Joao, thank you so much for spending a few minutes in the hot seat.
Thank you very much, Nick. It has been a pleasure speaking with you.
My pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.